A constitutional conference is organized with the solid aim of improving a constitutional framework or making propositions for constitutional changes existing within the constitutional framework. From the end of the Second World War in 1945 to the eventual independence in 1960, Nigerians have pushed for self-government, constitutional conferences, and their independence from their British colonial masters. On January 9, 1950, the Northern, Eastern, and Western regions delegates came as a body and met in Ibadan to discuss the issues of the Macpherson Constitution that the Governor-General Sir Johnson Macpherson was drafting. Only one woman was present, Mrs. Fumilayo Ransom Kuti. The conference was an effort by Sir Macpherson to create a constitution which the people would find acceptable, as there were complaints about the Clifford Constitution of 1922 and the Richards Constitution of 1946. The then Attorney General Sir Gerard Howe chaired the conference. Several issues were raised at the conference, issues ranging from revenue allocation to the system of government and political administration of Nigeria. The regional delegates wanted a change in the system for government. They wanted to adopt the federal system of government, which would grant them autonomy and allow each region to develop on its own level. They wanted to be regarded as an administrative region, vested with powers to decide and pass laws that will not be under the authority of the central legislature. The northern delegates had asked that a majority of the seats be allocated to their region. This request was refused by other delegates, as such an act would give the northern region absolute control. The failure of the central government and the northern threat of secession called for a review of the constitution that will address the situation and allay fears. The result was the Littleton Constitution that has been through a series of constitutional meetings in 1953 and 1954. The Littleton Constitution, unlike the Macpherson Constitution, was different in the fact that it introduced the federal system, which granted more autonomy to the regions. Other constitutional conferences followed in 1957 and 1958 before Nigeria attained its independence in October 1960. The Littleton Constitution went through two constitutional conferences presided over by Mr. Oliver Littleton, the Secretary for the Colonies. These conferences, the London Constitutional Conference of 1953 and the Lagos Constitutional Conference of 1954, also led to the adoption of federalism in Nigeria. Littleton discussed with the British House of Commons the situation in Nigeria in May 1953. He said that the constitution would have to be withdrawn to provide greater autonomy for each region. A constitutional conference was then summoned in London, chaired by Littleton. On July 30, 1953, the conference recommenced on August 22, 1953, as there was a need for a new constitution after the failure of the Macpherson Constitution. For proper representation and considerable political opinion, Nigerian leaders from 6 major political parties were invited to London by Oliver Littleton to review the constitution. The parties were Action Group AG, National Interest Party NIP, National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons NCNC, Northern Elements Progressive Union NEPU, Northern People's Congress MPC, and Cameroon National Congress KNC. Also, a team of 19 delegates comprising 6 from each region were also sent to London. The conference was held to analyze Nigeria's issues and find ways to alleviate tensions. They discussed the failure of the Macpherson Constitution, the changes required to correct these effects, how these changes would be implemented, and self-government for Nigeria in 1956. The agreements brought forward were the establishment of a federal system where the residual powers should be vested in the regional government. Lagos to be made a federal territory and separated from the Western region. Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II to grant self-government to the regions that wanted it in 1956. That the legislative powers be shared between the central and regional legislatures. The Governor of Nigeria be referred to as the Governor General, and the regional lieutenant governors be referred to as Governor. Finally, subject to approval by a conference held in Lagos in 1954, there would be an established regional administration in Cameroon if the people of the territory agree through a referendum. The Lagos Conference of 1954 was held in a bid to address certain unresolved political issues not attended to in the London Conference of 1953. It was decided and agreed that the concept of needs and national interest, which was part of the 4 principles of revenue allocation, should be removed from the revised constitution. Sir Lewis Chick was assigned as the sole fiscal commissioner. The conference reviewed his report of his fiscal commission published in December 1953 and concluded on the following decisions. In accordance with the concept of federalism, the judiciary and public service be regionalized. That Southern Cameroon be granted autonomy and that it has its own territorial legislature comprising of the Governor General to approve bills, a represented commissioner, 13 elected members, 6 native authorities, 3 ex-officio members and 2 other members to act on behalf of the interests of the communities not properly represented. That Southern Cameroon has its own legislature, remaining a part of Nigeria's federation as a quasi-federal territory. On a final note, the allotment of financial resources to the federal and regional government should be centered on the principle of derivation. The 1957 London Constitutional Conference was held in London from May 23 to June 26, 1957. The 1953 London Constitutional Conference resolved that within 3 years, beginning from August 31, 1953, the new constitution, the Littleton Constitution, be revised. The conference was initially scheduled for 1956 but was a setback because of a political crisis that ensued in the Eastern region. The political crisis was a result of an accusation raised by the chief whip of the NCNC, Mr. E.O. Ayo. He accused Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the premier of the region, of diverting public funds into the African Continental Bank, ACB, for his personal use. This accusation led Mr. Alan Lennox Boyd, the Secretary of State for the Colonies, to set up a panel to investigate the accusation. However, the 1957 London Constitutional Conference reached the following decisions. 1. That self-government be granted to the eastern and western regions in August 1957. 2. An organization of a commission of inquiry was to be organized to attend to the minority groups. 3. The independence of the northern region in March 1959. 4. The premier, as appointed by the governor of the region, should be the person who commands the most majority in the House of Assembly. 5. The police remain a federal institution. 6. The Southern Cameroon have its own region and premier. 7. The governor appoints ministers on the recommendation of the premier. 8. The prime minister, as appointed by the governor general, should be the one who commands the majority in the House of Representatives. 9. The new membership of the House of Representatives at 320 when the term of the existing old house dissolves in 1959. Finally, members of the regional and federal legislature be elected by universal adult suffrage in the East, West, Lagos and Southern Cameroon, and in the North, adult male suffrage. The 1958 Constitutional Conference was the last conference Nigeria had before its independence in October 1960. It took place in Lagos from September 29 to October 27, 1958. The conference addressed issues such as creating more regions or states to dissuade the fears of minority groups. The conference also granted Nigeria her independence in 1960. Before the independence, general elections were to hold in 1959 for the position of the House of Representatives. The NPC won 142 seats, the NCNC and NEPO won 89 seats, and the AG won 73 seats. The United Nations requested that plebiscites be held in northern and southern Cameroon to know if they would prefer to join the Republic of Cameroon or Nigeria. The plebiscites were held on February 11 and 12, 1961. The results showed that southern Cameroon wanted to join the Republic of Cameroon. They became part of the Republic of Cameroon on October 1, 1961, while northern Cameroon preferred to remain with Nigeria. They became part of northern Nigeria on June 1, 1961. Finally, the conference also entrenched a list of human rights that would protect the citizens in the Nigerian constitution, as well as a process of amending the constitution. National independence refers to the freedom from dependence or control by another state. Existing evidence shows that almost all African countries today were under colonial rule. It was a period of brutality, oppression, and exploitation of the resources of the colonies. The colonial situation thus gave the right to the struggle for independence. This fight for independence started in the 19th century, which was a period that incited the spirit of traditional nationalism. The traditional nationalists were traditional rulers and a few elites in present-day Nigeria. They opposed giving up their territories as they were denied respectable positions in their own land because of their race. The nationalist movement in Nigeria emerged in the 20th century with political organizations that contributed enormously to Nigerian independence. These political organizations created political consciousness among Nigerians. They enlightened Nigerians about the country's situation. They also had newspapers which played an important role in further enlightening the public. The Nigerian Youth Movement, formed in 1935, was another political organization. It was regarded as the core of Nigeria's first authentic nationalist organization. It was initially known as the Lagos Youth Movement, founded in 1934. It aimed for unity in the nation amidst all diversity. The movement championed universal adult suffrage, free education, severance of the judiciary from the legislature, and that all provinces be represented in the Legislative Council. It also encouraged trade union formation. The National Congress for British West Africa was formed in 1920 by Joseph Ephraim Casely Hayford and Dr. Akinwade Savage. The organization petitioned the Secretary of State for the Colonies with the following demands: a legislative council in all West African territories belonging to the British, with Africans forming half of its members; that the judiciary be separated from the legislature; ending racism in the civil service; formation of a university in West Africa; creation of municipal governments and the removal of objectionable ordinances. These demands led to the initiation of the elective principle in the 1922 Clifford Constitution, which gave Nigerians a chance to become elected members of the Legislative Council. The Nigerian National Democratic Party, NNDP, was another political organization that was formed on June 24, 1923 by Herbert Macaulay. The organization was created to contest elections that year. The NNDP criticized the colonial government based on the reformation of provincial courts, Nigeria's resource development, the 1927 income tax, equal economic opportunities for all Nigerians, and the establishment of educational institutions. Their demand led to the formation of Yaba Higher College in 1932. Aside newspapers and political organizations, there was an emergence of the professional unions that aided the nationalist movement. They were the Taxi Drivers Union in 1938, the Women's Sellers Union in 1940, the Railway Workers' Union in 1932, and the Canoe Transport Union in 1938. The Railway Workers' Union provided physical and financial support to the nationalist movement. With the nationalist movements and the Constitution serving as a huge landmark in the struggle for independence, a motion was passed in the Federal House of Representatives in January 1960 to appeal to the British monarchy that Nigeria be granted her independence that same year. The Federation of Nigeria conventionally attained its independence and joined the list of Commonwealths of Nations in 1960. On that day, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa was appointed as the head of government or Prime Minister of Nigeria. Similarly, on November 16, 1960, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, the former Premier of the Eastern Region, was appointed as the head of state or Governor General and a representative of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. On October 1, 1963, Nigeria then became a republic with Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa as the Prime Minister and Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe as the President. But that republic would last for just 2.5 years before the military struck. You can learn more about the First Republic in our next episode.